and welcome to Timeless with Julie Hartman Live. It is Wednesday, June 5th, 2024. I'm Julie Hartman, and it is great, as always, to be with you. 844-861-5537 is the call-in number, 844-861-5537. I literally look right at the camera. Don't even need to look down at this point to recite that number. If you'd like to call in, as always, I'd love to chat with you, or you can use the live chat, which I have a direct line to right here, but you know the rule. Just keep it classy. Sean McConnell, hello, my dear friend. Welcome onto the show. There's always a lot up, but today, I feel like I always start the episodes with that. Today's a real good one, but this one really is a standout.
I feel like
you're about to do.
We start at 1-ish.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, sometimes it's not always late. For those who are watching this later and are not understanding the reference, we're live on YouTube Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays at 1 o'clock Pacific, 4 o'clock Eastern. But sometimes we're running around trying to get, videos rendered and hair and makeup together.
One-ish.
I do my own hair and makeup.
One adjacent.
Hey, listen, I do my own hair, makeup, research, booking. You guys are so great with the video, but we're running around trying to get everything together, and it's a joy. But yes, at times we start at 1:03 p.m. instead of 1 o'clock Pacific. Forgive us. But today, I promise you, the slight tardiness will be worth your while. For those of you who have been watching this show for the 18 months that I've been doing it, you know that I am a girl who likes to go down some rabbit holes. And the only thing that can get me out of one rabbit hole is moving on to the next one. I never get out of the rabbit holes. I'm just underground constantly running into different ones. On this show, as those of you know, to rhyme, I recently wrote a list of all of the things that we've done. And honestly, I was amazed even reading the list. I've done shows on flags based on the great book, A Flag Worth Dying For, by a British author whose name is escaping me right now. But I put up all of the photos of these various flags and showed how the flag of Liberia looks a lot like the flag of the United States, and how the flag of Jordan is just like the Palestinian flag, and Sharif Hussein's flag making as part of the Pan-Arab movement. We've done shows on the symbolism and colors of flags. I have done a show on the origin and development of language based on Mario Pai's fantastic book on that subject. Yes, Sean?
The author.
It's Tom something, and he's British. It's don't tell me. Marshall. Tim Marshall. Tim Marshall. I just got it. Because he's such a great author. And then he wrote another fantastic book on the power of geography, which everyone should read. And undoubtedly, I'll be doing a timeless episode, inspired by that. I've done profiles on people like Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, the first president of the Republic of Turkey, who was a fascinating figure. He was pro-Western, pro-American, and we talked about how the Turkish alphabet, among other things, is actually inspired by the American alphabet, and how there was a time in Turkey where Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, outlawed the hijab, outlawed the fez, which was the hat in the Ottoman Empire, because he wanted Turkey to be so Western. And now Turkey is very much becoming anti-Western. Oh my gosh, what else have we done? I've done shows telling you why Jane Eyre is such a fantastic book. I interviewed Dion, the famous singer of Runaround Sue and The Wanderer, and Abraham Martin and John. I've done shows on near-death experiences. Those are quite interesting things. By the way, did you know that they say that about 5% of the world population has had near-death experiences? That's cray-cray. remember we did the show on advertising, how advertising has changed, and I played the Frito Bandito commercial and talked about how advertising used to be so good and now it is just so trite and corny. I interviewed the biographer of ABBA, David Leaf, who writes a biography of Brian Wilson. You all know better than anyone the rabbit holes that we've gone down.
You know, while you're playing our greatest hits, did you look at the chat? Did you look at the chat?
People are make Sean do the renegade again. Did you do it yesterday? No, I did it.
I did it.
You did it? I didn't even see you.
And since we aim to please, shall we?
Let's do it. Oh my God, I can't believe we're doing this. Oh my God. This show endeavors to be so classy. It's called Timeless. And then here we are at the beginning doing the renegade. Do you know how to do it? Do
I know how to do it?
Do you wait, actually,
I invented the renegade.
Real. Okay, let's be real. Do you know the oh my God, people are laughing in the chat. We got to put up the chat here so people can see the laughing emojis. I'm glad you guys are finding this to be so funny. I, on the other hand, am totally mortified and would love that to be scrubbed from the internet completely. What in the world am I watching? What you're watching is that among the other rabbit hole topics, yesterday we talked about social media and technology and how technology has completely changed and transformed the human experience and in turn human personalities. And we played the renegade because I wanted to show that the way that my generation, and I'm 24, Gen Z, the way that my generation has fun has totally changed. Like when Sean was a kid, you know, what did you guys, you played ball? You played catch? We did the renegade. So that's what you're watching for the guy who's very aptly writing what the heck is going on. Okay, so the point, and there really is a point here, not just going back and playing the greatest hits for old time's sake. The point is to tell you that the through line of all of these different shows is that I really am a true conservative. Not just in the political sense, and you know we do a lot of news where I'm talking about the various craziness of the day. Earlier this week we did one on our martyr being martyred when Donald Trump was convicted on all 34 felony counts last Thursday. You guys know I do the news. But I'm truly conservative in the sense that I want to conserve the best of everything. Not just the principles of the American founding, but the best art, the best music, the best architecture, the best people. I just want to go out in life and find the coolest stories, the coolest lessons, the coolest paintings. We've done shows on paintings and bring it out to you. So, you know, I have this little quirky, idiosyncratic tendency to go down these rabbit holes, and I'm just trying to make it into a show that you all hopefully enjoy, and I can see in the chat your lovely comments, and I thank you so much for them. So speaking of the rabbit holes, we should have done a drum roll for what the rabbit hole is today. Can we? Oh gosh, see, this is what happens when we're live.
I can do it.
Those of you watching live, you got to be patient. Can you guess? What crazy rabbit hole is it going to be today? Audrey Hepburn. Let's put up a photo.
I didn't see that coming.
By the way, seriously, we try to keep these interactions between Sean and me very spontaneous. So we actually don't talk before the show about what's going on. So
Not only do we not talk, you forced me to put on headphones and sit like I was in timeout while you talked to everybody else.
I say to him, don't listen to when we're planning the production, I say, don't listen to any of this because I want you to have spontaneous reactions on air. But yes, today we're going to be talking about the magnificent Audrey Hepburn, who was really a giant among men. A very petite giant among men, but a complete giant among men, this woman, in terms of her elegance, her class, and her grace. I told you that I have gone down an Audrey Hepburn rabbit hole recently. I never watched any of her films. I'd heard of Breakfast at Tiffany's or some of the other things.
Pardon me. Does that second shot of her look like Ben Shapiro?
Oh my
Put
gosh.
that back up, Alejo.
If Ben Shapiro's watching, he's blushing right now.
That second one looks like Ben Shapiro.
What do you mean the second one? The one with her in the white?
Left.
From the left looks like Ben Shapiro. This is the randomest. Are you okay?
I'm not wrong. I'm not wrong.
Okay.
That second one looks like Ben Shapiro.
You know what's? It's actually fascinating that you say this, Sean, because I've been watching some clips of Audrey Hepburn, and there was one, and I can't remember. Maybe it's in these videos that I pulled for today, and I thought she looked like Brett Cooper, which is such a compliment to Brett Cooper. Brett Cooper's so pretty, and everyone says that Brett Cooper looks like Ben Shapiro. So maybe you're spot on. Forgive me, Ben, if you're watching. I don't think he's watching, but if you're watching.
No, I love Ben. It's not a dig on Ben.
You worked with Ben, by the way, but Sean was Ben's producer, yeah.
I think...
it's not a dig on Ben. You were just saying, hardly a dig on Ben. This is the greatest compliment you could give anyone.
Yeah, but I think this is who Dylan Mulvaney's trying to be.
Oh, gosh.
You know?
Please don't put Dylan Mulvaney and Audrey Hepburn together in the same sentence.
I'm done interrupting. Please carry on.
No, your interruptions are hilarious. But I had never watched any Audrey Hepburn movies. Because people my age, we grow up doing the damn Renegade. We don't grow up watching these fantastic, timeless movies. But what I'm trying to do is go back into the past, use my little penchant for going down rabbit holes, and pull out some of these things that are lost among my generation. And boy, have I found one in this magnificent woman. People my age, you know, I know this so well. When we think of Audrey Hepburn, we don't know anything about her generally. Of course, I'm speaking in broad terms here. There may be some people my age who know about her. But generally among Gen Z, when we think of Audrey Hepburn, we think of this photo, the Breakfast at Tiffany's photo, where Audrey's looking so slim and so, you know, gorgeous, and she has her white gloves on. I don't know if we can pull up that photo right now of her with the croissant. Again, people who are with us live, you get the real behind the scenes. Yes, that photo. It's so memeable. It's such a great photo. And having watched the movie a few days ago, as I did, the whole movie, what she's doing is spectacular. But my generation, we take that photo and we make it into a meme for ourselves. I mean, we send this photo around to each other and we're like, me after work, you know, or me on the weekends. And we've sort of collectively gotten this idea that Audrey Hepburn was a bit of a ditz. Because we don't know anything about her, generally speaking. We haven't really watched her movies or learned about her. And so we see a photo like this and we kind of embrace it as a meme. But then we think that actress was just sort of a ditzy girl on screen. No. Audrey Hepburn was the opposite of a ditz. Audrey Hepburn was one of the smartest, most elegant, wise, fashionable, totally gorgeous, but effervescent human beings that, as dramatic as it sounds, I would endeavor to say have ever graced God's green earth. You know, that person in that photo, she was fluent in English, Dutch, Spanish, French, and Italian. Italiano. Audrey Hepburn, the fluent. Five languages. What do we even call that? Bilingual, trilingual, five-lingual? There's not even a word to describe what that beautiful woman, that capability that she had. And when you hear her story of how she grew up, what she had to face throughout her life, you will be blown away. But to give you a little taste, just a little taste of this fantastic icon, I want you to watch this video. It's from 1956, and it's at the Academy Awards when Audrey Hepburn, and she's 27 years old in this video, is presenting the Academy Award. And 3 years earlier, when she was 24 years old, it's very easy to feel a little unaccomplished when you're comparing yourself at 24 to Audrey Hepburn. 3 years earlier, when she was my age, 24 years old, she won the Academy Award. So this is her at 27 presenting it. You are going to be dazzled by this lady. Isn't that amazing? I just love the elegance and the genuine joy and restraint and beauty that emanates from her. And, we watch these things now, these presentations now at the Oscars or the Emmys or the Grammys, and we have people getting up there in these absurd outfits, showing all their stuff, and they're getting up there cursing, saying the most crude things, all while sneering at conservatives and Donald Trump supporters. The people that we have in front of us right now are so lowly compared to what we had in Audrey Hepburn. Again, that's in 1956, if you can believe it.
There is a word for it.
What?
It's either quintilingual or pentalingual.
Oh, yes, thank you. One of the two is what our dear Audrey was. But you look at that woman, and you would never have any idea of what she went through growing up. Because to her great credit, and this is one of the reasons why I have just fallen in love with her, I adore her, and I would count her as one of my many great role models and icons. She had every reason to be jaded. She had every reason to be bitter and to really give up on her life. But instead, when you saw her in these videos and when you saw her on screen, there was not one iota of jadedness that you could sense from her. And in fact, quite the opposite. And it was so genuine, the genuine love of life, the genuine gentleness and graciousness. But for those of you who don't know, Audrey Hepburn grew up under Nazi occupation in the Netherlands. This is an amazing story. I told Sean before we got in here, in the one or two sentences I did in fact speak to him. I said, if you think you're going to be blown away, because you told me you know nothing about Audrey Hepburn. You're like people in Gen Z. A lot of people these days don't know very much about Audrey Hepburn. I said, however much blown away you think you'll be, it's twice that. Audrey was born in 1929 in Belgium, and her family story is a whole other rabbit hole one could go down onto its own. But she, actually, her father left the family. And Audrey ended up going to boarding school in England from the time she was about 7 years old to 10 years old. Her father left the family to go join the Brown Shirts fascist movement in England. And her mother was a Nazi sympathizer. So again, she's coming of age born in 1929. She's coming of age in the 30s when all of this is metastasizing. And so she's in Belgium. Her family has to move away from Belgium because German forces come in and occupy Belgium. Her father leaves the family to go to England to join the Brown Shirts. Her mother penned all of these pro-Nazi, pro-Hitler letters. But because Audrey went away to that boarding school when she was at such a young and impressionable age, she, unlike her parents, was able to shirk that lust for fascism. And so let me see, I have my notes here. She went from 1936 to 1939 to boarding school. And then at the outbreak of World War II in 1939, her family had to flee Belgium, and she moved with her mother and her siblings to the Netherlands to seek safe harbor from the Nazis. But then the Nazis came into the Netherlands. And so from the time that Audrey was 10 in 1939 to the time that she was 15, 16 in 1945, she was under Nazi occupation in the Netherlands. She starved. She had to go into hiding. I mean, I'm just giving you a taste today. When I talk about rabbit holes, there are so many rabbit holes, trust me, that one could go down with regard to Audrey Hepburn and what she's been through. But she had to eat tulip bulbs because she was starving under Nazi occupation. That's why she was so thin for all of her life. Here's just a quintessential photo of Audrey Hepburn, and she was known for being incredibly thin, and she created, as Barbara Walters observed about her, this look of thinness coupled with the fantastic clothing, the elegance, the childlike innocence. But that thinness was, many people, attribute it to Hollywood eating problems, but it was because she grew up malnourished. Okay, so you think that's enough, right? You think, holy moly, this woman is, as I said, a giant among men and women, to be non-patriarchal. Wait till you hear this. Not only was she under Nazi occupation from ages about 10 to 15, starving, fleeing, hiding, and watching her family members get carted away or get shot. She talks about one of her uncles getting shot. She joined a ballet company. She studied ballet at a conservatory in the Netherlands. And by 1944, she had gotten to be such a fantastic ballet dancer during these performances that she raised money to support the Dutch resistance to the Nazis. The underground Dutch resistance movement through her dancing. And she was just a wee teenager at that time. So her father abandoned the family. Her father's off in England supporting the fascist brown shirts. Her mother's a Nazi sympathizer, and her mother really was not kind to her, which one can check out if I have piqued your interest at all in this episode. And Audrey, graceful, beautiful Audrey, decides to overcome that, follow her love of dancing, all while trying to help combat the evil, evil regime that she was under. And we live in a time where people think they're a victim because they've been microaggressed. People think that they're victims because colleges like Elon University in North Carolina dared to call first years freshmen. Oh my gosh. Freshmen, the word men in it. God, boy, we have it hard these days. This is why I love this woman. These are the icons that we have to fill our souls with, not Lizzo up at the Grammys, twerking as she gets her trophy. It's ridiculous. Okay, so what are we talking about now? See, I gotta look at, I've pulled so many videos and I've lost my way here a little bit. Okay, so Roman Holiday. Oh yes, of course. Oh my gosh, there's so much to say about Audrey. So Roman Holiday. So she's, the war ends. She's about 15 years old, and she decides to go back to England and pursue her love of dancing and theater. And so she starts doing these plays. And unsurprisingly, some high-up people in Hollywood who happen to be in England notice this fantastic woman. And they're coming up with a movie called Roman Holiday. And the movie is about a princess who takes a day off of her royal duties and goes in the streets of Rome. This princess was in Rome for a state visit. And she takes time off of her royal duties and she falls in love with this American reporter, and they gallivant around Rome. You can see a picture here of Audrey and her co-star Gregory Beck gallivanting around Rome.
Yes? Peck.
What did I say?
You said Beck.
Oh, gosh. No, you misheard me. I said Peck.
It's okay.
Okay, I'm kidding.
You know what it did? It took the visual I had of Lizzo eating tulip bulbs out of my mind, so thank you.
Oh, gosh. But so they're planning this movie of these gorgeous people gallivanting around Rome. They had actually thought that Elizabeth Taylor would be good in the movie. But then Audrey does a screen test for Roman Holiday, and they fall in love with Audrey Hepburn. And so at just 23 years old, Audrey moves out to the United States and she films Roman Holiday. And I want to show you a clip from Roman Holiday because it's such a great film. I watched it for the first time about a week ago. If you haven't seen it, take my word for it. You will love it. But this film is so different from the kind of movies that we see today because it's more restrained. When people are flirting or there's a love interest in modern American movies, you have these sex scenes and it's very in your face, and there's no subtlety or nuance or restraint, or graceful and shrewd filmmaking. There used to be elegant, graceful, shrewd filmmaking. I want you to watch this scene of Audrey Hepburn, who's playing the princess, and Gregory Peck, thank you very much, Sean, who's the reporter in the audience. And they're having this exchange where Audrey is asked by a reporter, as the princess, what she says about relations among states. And Audrey's doing this cool, subtle communication thing with her lover, Gregory Peck, in the audience. It's so magnificent. Here it is.
And what, in the opinion of Your Highness, is the outlook for friendship among nations?
I have every faith in it, as I have faith in relations between people.
So flirty.
May I say, speaking for my own press service, we believe that Your Highness's faith will not be unjustified.
They just don't make movies like that anymore. It leaves you wanting more. It doesn't broadcast the nitty-gritty of the romance in your face. It's just fantastic. And Audrey won the Academy Award, as I had mentioned, when she was 24 years old. This was her first film. No shock. It was a massive success. Here's a video of the graceful Audrey Hepburn accepting the Academy Award in 1956. 24 years old. 10 years ago, she was under Nazi occupation in the Netherlands. It's fantastic.
I love when she walked on stage and had a Joe Biden moment.
It is, Sean, it's very funny that you mentioned that. I'm shocked that you noticed. I was going to do a little rewind because I was betting that the audience did not, in fact, notice that. Most people don't notice that when they're watching that video because Audrey is so elegant that the way that she handles the faux pas leaves you to not notice. Let's rewind.
Okay. With flair.
You're so right. You are so right. It was a Joe Biden moment. My gosh, I never thought when we started this live episode that within the first 20 minutes we would be comparing Audrey Hepburn to Ben Shapiro, Dylan Mulvaney, and Joe Biden. That wasn't in my bingo card for this episode. But you see it. You see how wonderful and graceful she is. And she did dozens of movies. And what's so cool about her movies is that people saw what a talent and what a giant among men she was. And they always casted her with these massively famous Hollywood stars as her co-stars. To just give you a bit of a list, and truthfully, I don't know who many of these people are. I'm discovering them myself, maybe the audience, and I'm loving the chat. Keep it coming. And you, Sean, or those of you in the producer's dungeon may know some of these people. Gregory Peck is one of them. So, some of these I do know. I'm not so tuned out. I do know Humphrey Bogart is another one. Henry Fonda, Fred Astaire, Gary Cooper, Burt Lancaster, Cary Grant, William Holden, and Sean Connery.
These are all huge icons worthy of their own episodes.
Yes, they are. Well, frankly, I don't really I'm taking your word for it that they are. I only know some of them, and I'm exploring. I'm exploring more of them. I mean, it is a travesty that people in my generation don't know about Audrey Hepburn, and it is a travesty, so I hear, that many of us don't know about Cary Grant. I was talking with someone the other day at Shabbat dinner, and they mentioned Cary Grant. I said, "Oh, that was one of the co-stars that I read in my," because I'm reading an Audrey Hepburn biography right now. That was Audrey Hepburn's co-star. And this person looked at me like, "Julie, you don't know who Cary Grant is?" So I'll go down that rabbit hole.
The quintessential male. You've never seen North by Northwest?
No, I haven't seen any of those. But it shows you that
To Kill a Mockingbird? You never saw To Kill a Mockingbird? Maybe you read To Kill a Mockingbird.
Yes, of course I've read To Kill a Mockingbird.
That's Gregory Peck later in his life.
I see.
Anywho.
Well, look
all worthy rabbit holes, my dear.
Don't worry. If there's anyone who'll go down them, you can count on me to go down them. I recently watched, speaking of Fred Astaire, one of those co-stars, Funny Face. Such a great movie. This one Audrey did in 1957 when she was 28 years old, and her co-star in that was Fred Astaire, who, again, I do know. I'm not so out to lunch. I know Fred Astaire. And you guys, I could show you so many parts of this film that I fell in love with, but I have to show you, if I had to pick one, I have to pick this one. And it's a dancing scene between Fred Astaire and Audrey Hepburn. We'll watch the first part of it, but she didn't choreograph it. Someone else did, but a lot of it when they were filming was improvised. And she's so graceful. She's such a great dancer that she combines sexiness, elegance, skill, fun, innocence, all into one dance. Let's watch the first part of the scene.
Where I come from, the man asks the girl to dance.
Oh, you must come from the Stone Age. Isn't it time you realize that dancing is nothing more than a form of expression or release? There's no need to be formal or cute about it. As a matter of fact, I rather feel like expressing myself now. And I could certainly use a release.
Okay, so that, pause right there. She throws her hands in the air. She starts doing this fantastic dance. And we can't show the whole thing. It's 3 to 4 minutes long, but I'll show you part of the ending. How incredible. I'm just...
Yeah. I got winded doing Renegade.
Yeah, can you imagine?
She would have been quite a TikTok star.
Oh, gosh. So unbefitting. You're just throwing in these references that are so unbefitting of the great Audrey Hepburn. But it's... She would have had nothing to do with TikTok. She would have been so far ahead of that. Wouldn't have even considered it. But... boy, that takes quite a staggering amount of skill. Another great film of Audrey's, among many, is Sabrina. Sabrina, she did in 1954. And kind of fun fact about this film, her co-star in that, William Holden, who's, I understand, is a pretty big actor, although I'm going to let that one slide. Don't really know very much about him, besides this fact, which I read in my Audrey Hepburn biography. Audrey fell in love with William Holden when she was doing that film, but there was just one slight problem to the whole love story. He was married. But nevertheless, he wasn't a fool. He was considering leaving his marriage for Audrey Hepburn. But then the deal breaker of the whole relationship is that William Holden had a vasectomy and he couldn't have children. And Audrey wanted children. And so they had to part from each other. And he was married and, probably should have retained his vows that he took to his wife. But he also did have a vasectomy, and that was the reason that they ended up not being together. But for the rest of William Holden's life, he called Audrey Hepburn the love of his life. I mean, can you blame him? No shade to his wife, who I know nothing about. I'm sure she was a lovely woman, but of course, if you have the opportunity to be with Audrey Hepburn, that will be the one who got away. Breakfast at Tiffany's, another fantastic Audrey Hepburn film. Let's see, this was in 1961, and I watched it in my rabbit hole going down, and I gotta tell you, I didn't really like it. I didn't like it because I felt that the role was unbefitting of Audrey Hepburn. Just as comparing her, Sean, to Dylan Mulvaney and Joe Biden and TikTok influencers is unbefitting of Audrey Hepburn. Though no shock that Sean's doing it. I felt like this role was unbefitting of her. For those of you who haven't watched Breakfast at Tiffany's, she plays an escort in the film, and she moves into this, or she's actually in the apartment building, and then there's a guy who moves into the apartment building, and the guy is married to an older woman, and it's just sort of a film about these realities in life, men dating older women, a woman being an escort. I'm not saying the whole film is bad, but I just think of Audrey Hepburn as so timeless. Sorry to throw that term around so much, but I think of her so timeless that I didn't want to see her as an escort. Sean, I know I see you want to cut in.
So, with all the interesting facts about her and her life that you're sharing with us, why do you think she's most known for Breakfast at Tiffany's? Why is that the one thing that everyone remembers her for?
That's a really good question. I think because we're shallow. Can we cut to Sean and see him laughing? But seriously, I think it's because we're shallow and that we are not sophisticated enough as a culture anymore. We used to be, but now we're not, to appreciate the truly most elegant films of hers, like Funny Face or Roman Holiday. Our culture doesn't have an appetite for that. Our culture has more of an appetite for the tawdry than we do for the elegant. So that's why I think. But so I thought that she was unbefitting of this role. And I talked with my dear friend Robert Florzak, who we've had on this show. He is a art movie aficionado, and I told him I was going down this Audrey Hepburn rabbit hole, and I called him and I said, God, Robert, I really just felt like it was unbefitting of her. And he told me this amazing fact that actually the person who wrote Breakfast at Tiffany's, Truman Capote, he actually...
Capote. Capote.
I'm learning alongside you all. I'm just learned about Audrey Hepburn fairly recently, so you can't expect me to know Capote. But apparently Truman Capote disagreed with the casting. He thought that Marilyn Monroe would be more fitting for the character at Breakfast at Tiffany's because Marilyn Monroe is more earthy. She was more sexy. Audrey was very sexy, but you take my point. Marilyn Monroe was really a sex symbol during that time. And so actually Capote had wanted Marilyn Monroe to be cast, but for various reasons, the studio, timing, etc., they wanted Audrey Hepburn. And so Audrey Hepburn was cast. But during the movie, they played down that she was an escort. It's actually not totally clear in the movie. And I like that because even though I think it's unbefitting of her to even have the role in the first place, I like that we didn't see Audrey Hepburn, I'm sorry to sound crude, but doing sex scenes, because that would be unbefitting of her. But Audrey ended up being very happy with the film Breakfast at Tiffany's. And I watched this lovely clip of her doing the press tour for Breakfast at Tiffany's. And she had just had, I think, her first son. She had 2 kids. I think she had just had her oldest son. And it's just so lovely the way that she's talking with the press. It's quintessential, gracious, uber polite Audrey Hepburn.
This girl gets a great lift and
She's fun
out of walking down Fifth Avenue at the crack of dawn with a breakfast which she's bought in a drugstore and looking in the window at Tiffany's.
What sort of a girl is she?
She's what they call in America these days a kook.
What does that mean? Spelled with a K, I believe.
Which is a dizzy, gay type of girl.
Anything like you?
I'm not quite that way, no.
How long are you staying here?
Just until tomorrow morning.
Why such a short visit?
Well, because I only just left for the night and to come here and to aid this wonderful charity for muscular dystrophy, and I can't leave my young son any longer because he has no nurse at the moment, and my husband and a friend is there, but I must rush back.
How is he?
He's wonderful, thank you.
Good. What about your future plans? Any more pictures?
I'm afraid I have none at the moment. That there are plans, but none of them have been decided on, so I have no titles of pictures to give you or anything. But we'll soon see.
You can't help but watch her and be mesmerized. I love that. He's wonderful, thank you. And it's so genuine. You know, as I was saying, Audrey Hepburn would have had every reason, and we really ought to learn this lesson in our modern times. She would have had every reason to be jaded and bitter and sneer at the press and really give up on life or have a chip on her shoulder because of what she went through. But she never let herself go down into those dregs. She never consigned herself to a diminished life or others to a diminished life by adopting that kind of bitterness. You know, I was watching a documentary about her. I really should tally up how many Audrey Hepburn sources I've consulted. So many, and I'll put them in the description box because you know I'm a girl who likes to cite my source. Are we doing it, Sean? Ding, ding.
Ding! Julie Hartman, not gay.
That's right. I'm not like the president of my alma mater, Claudine Gay. I like to cite my sources, so I'll put them in the description box. But I was watching a documentary about Audrey Hepburn, and they told me in the documentary that Audrey said that she discovered a quote when she was little. And the quote was that you should love life unconditionally. And Audrey Hepburn said that quote made the biggest impact on her of anything in her life. And from a very early age, she just resolved to love life unconditionally, to go through anything, you know, the depths of despair being under Nazi occupation or the heights of fame and adoration being a Hollywood starlet. She resolved from an early age because of that quote that whatever life threw at her, she was going to embrace it unconditionally. And that reminds me of something that I read, we did a show on it, on Orthodoxy by G.K. Chesterton. G.K. Chesterton has this fantastic chapter in Orthodoxy where he talks about being a cosmic patriot, about being a lover of life with whatever it throws at you, of kind of buying into life. That's something that we've talked about on Dennis and Julie. That yes, we all have our struggles, we all have our triumphs, but whatever it is, let's kind of embrace this mystery of life and go forward and just do the best we can. And I'm mesmerized by this woman because in every single clip, you can see that sturdy worldview in her just shining through. And that worldview shines through in the same way that her beauty does. Her physical beauty, in my opinion. She not only had a fantastic inner life, she not only had stunning, radiant outer beauty, Audrey Hepburn had a singing voice. She was one of only 9 performers to win an Oscar, a Tony, an Emmy, and a Grammy. She didn't win a Grammy for this song, but this is one of my favorites. This is at the beginning of Breakfast at Tiffany's. Oh gosh, it's such a lovely song. It wasn't written for the movie. I think it was a already established song, but she sang it for the movie. And she has that lovely gentleness and sweetness that comes through. But of course, there's also a somberness in that song that she knows well from her life experience. And and also the accent. She was born in Belgium. She spent time in boarding school in England, and then she moved to the Netherlands. So she has a very unique accent, and it all just comes through beautifully.
I think we're going to name this episode Demonetized.
That's right. That is right. Oh gosh, as I was pulling YouTube clips for this, I was just thinking, yeah, we're definitely being demonetized, but it's so worth it. It's so worth it for Audrey. So
before you move on, you did inspire me. It made me think when you said that the role was not written for her in Breakfast at Tiffany's, it was written for Marilyn Monroe.
Or with the idea of they had her in mind.
Episode on that. There are classic roles that were written for people that were filled by other people.
Absolutely.
Sometimes worked out and made their careers, and sometimes it didn't. That would be awesome. Go down that rabbit hole.
I know. Sometimes people email me and they're like, I'll give you the idea and go down the rabbit hole. But I already have a list of all the other ones I want to check off before I do that. But you're right, that would be such a fantastic one because there are so many of those, as we know from Breakfast at Tiffany's. So I could tell you so much about Audrey's life. She was married twice. She married Mel Ferrer, who was her co-star in War and Peace, and she unfortunately divorced. The marriage did not work out, and then she married a second individual whose name is escaping me, but that's okay. She was married twice, and she had some pain in her life. She never broadcasted it because she didn't trauma dump on all of us. Harry and Meghan do the whole Oprah expose because some unnamed member of the royal family may have said some innocuous, non-racist comment that, of course, they're going to spin into racism because it personally and professionally advantages them. We live in the era where literal princes and princesses do their trauma dumping on all of us for nothing that ever went wrong in their lives. But then we once had someone like Audrey Hepburn who quietly went through her struggles gracefully without telling us about them. As Sean said yesterday, what did you say when we were playing the TikTok Depressed People? You said, I'm old school. I keep my depression to myself. Yeah, I love that.
Her second husband was Andrea Doty?
Doty, that's right. That's right. Thank you. So we're going to kind of skip the middle, though. If you would like me to do a subsequent show on it, I would love to. But I want to show you Audrey at the end of her life. Because getting older as a woman, especially when you were that young and you were the hottest name in Hollywood and known for your beauty, getting older and aging, which all of us do, it can be difficult on someone, especially someone with that reputation. And as she got older, she never lost any of that dignity or that class. Here's a great video of her from 1989.
And I'm delighted to welcome this Sunday the Oscar-winning actress Audrey Hepburn. Straight away, it's quite amazing, from the 50s and 60s and all those films, you have hardly changed. You haven't gained an ounce.
Listen, now what can I say?
And when I look back on that period, at a time when Marilyn Monroe had made curves the fashion, you really sort of did away with bosoms and curves all on your own.
Not really. They're still around. I just wasn't blessed with them, but I made it to this lovely interview. Nevertheless, years later, in spite of the fact that I had no curves.
Restrained, gentle, self-deprecating humor. She was out of the spotlight for a while, and then she started doing more interviews at the end of her life, and she became the ambassador to UNICEF. She died at the age of 64 of cancer, and so young. Very tragically. But in the last few years of her life, although she was out of the spotlight, she gave so much of her time towards helping needy, gravely impoverished children all around the world. Here's a Barbara Walters interview with Audrey Hepburn, and you get just a little sense of the vast amount of magnanimity that she shared in her final years with the world.
I'd been pursuing an interview with Miss Hepburn for years. and she finally agreed to meet me on the beaches of Acapulco, Mexico, where she was doing some work nearby with underprivileged children for UNICEF. She was 60 at the time, and I'm still trying to get over how terrific she looked. The very definition of class. February of 1989, Audrey Hepburn arrives at the tiny Mexican village of Chaucingo, which has known poverty, malnutrition, and neglect for centuries. The villagers greet her warmly, but they have no way of knowing who she really is. They do know this woman must be important because she gets to be the first to turn on their new water system. Yes. She must be important. She's allowed to vaccinate their babies and to speak in the town square about her organization, UNICEF.
Today is a happy day.
But they don't know her movies, her acclaim, her impact on the world. They don't know she is the Audrey Hepburn. Still, the children follow her through the town like the Pied Piper, and in their faces, she sees something of herself. She was born in Belgium in 1929. Her mother was a Dutch baroness and raised her in Holland. Her father abandoned her when she was only 6. In 1939, the Nazis marched into her homeland, and for the next 5 years, Audrey learned what it was like to be hungry, to be afraid, to hide from the bombs, to simply survive.
So Barbara Walters, if I may cut in, she does so much more about Audrey's life. I'm just today giving you, the highlights and hopefully piquing your interest a bit so that you can go down the rabbit hole. But Barbara Walters goes on for another minute or two, really tracing her life. And then, like me, she comes to the end. And this is so graceful.
Then in 1988, she was appointed the Special Ambassador to the United Nations Children's
That's
Fund,
Moon River
UNICEF.
in the background.
When we caught up with her in Mexico, she was at the end of her Central American tour. She traveled the world on their behalf and was a tireless advocate for children. After giving so much, she was taken much too early. In 1993, she died of cancer at the age of 63. Audrey, you were 10 years old when the Nazis invaded Holland.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us what it was like for you. What was that childhood like for this little 10-year-old?
Well, I tell you, I remember what I remember.
That we got to pause for a minute. What an amazing answer. Barbara Walters goes, Audrey, what was that like for you? The Nazi occupation. And she answers, I remember what I remember. And so in that one answer, she has such humility to know that her experience was not the general experience. How would someone in the modern day answer that question? Someone in the modern day would ask, not, what was it like growing up in Nazi, occupied Netherlands? Someone would ask, what was it like going to school with a conservative? And someone would answer, oh my God, it was the worst thing, and I am a victim, and oh my God, I've been aggrieved, and my whole life is terrible, and I can't go outside without fear that I'm going to be the victim of the patriarchy. Look at the modern way that people, talk about problems in their lives. And then we have someone like Audrey Hepburn who's asked, what was it like to live under Nazi occupation? And she says, I remember what I remember. She does tell us a bit about what she remembers.
I just remember very early in the morning being woken up by my mother. All the curtains in the house had to stay drawn because we'd been told on the radio that the invading troops were coming into the city. And I peeked through the curtains anyway and saw tanks and armored cars and Germans, piling out of buses with their guns trained on all the windows.
Yes, and she goes on to talk about being malnourished and all that she had to face. But here's just one more video I'll show, highlights. This is a 25-minute interview, which you can go watch. But I do want to show you this highlight where she's talking about watching Jewish children being put into cattle cars. And, and the modern world today, in this post-October 7th moment when we are having pro-Hamas, basically Hitler Youth 2.0 come out onto our streets, burning the American flag, and many of them are denying the Holocaust. We're seeing a resurgence of Holocaust denial today. I want people to see this video of Audrey Hepburn, the great Hollywood starlet, watching firsthand under her struggle under Nazi occupation, watching Jews being put into cattle cars.
While we were waiting for our train, a great big cattle train pulled in, and lots of Jews were loaded on. And I remember a little boy with red hair and a very white face, and I didn't understand at all why he had to go with all those grown-ups in such a funny-looking train, you know, with just a little space at the top. Nor did we quite know at the time where they were going or what was going to happen to them. This, you know, we learned later. But those are things you never forget.
Those are the things you never forget. Our world is forgotten. They choose to deny that that really happened, but it did. And her lived experience, to use a very modern term, is proof. It's amazing. We have to now show proof that talk about proof that the Holocaust happened, but this is the world that we're living in. But what a splendid woman in every way, with her fantastic acting skills, her graceful public service, her recounting of what she went through, the history that she lived through, and just the dazzling example that she set in her everyday life of a magnanimous, graceful, talented, chic, classy woman. May we all, you know, really embrace her and not forget that this fantastic petite woman did grace this earth. We're so lucky to have Audrey Hepburn, have had her, and to have the archives on the internet to go down and look her up. But because that was a bit heavy, I realize I want to end with something fun, because that was Audrey. She went through so much, and she saw great poverty and great evil and great suffering in her early life and through her work with UNICEF. She never ran from evil. She looked evil in the face and tried to do what she could to combat it. But she also was genuinely fun, and she loved life. She embraced it, as I said, unconditionally. And I think this scene in Funny Face, which is, I would say, so far of what I've seen, my favorite Audrey Hepburn movie, it's where Fred Astaire, who plays a photographer, is taking photos of Audrey and trying to get just the right angle of her for this magazine cover that Audrey was going to come on. And I think this just captures her sense of fun.
Never mind what I'm going to do. Just say go.
Take the picture. Take the picture. Yeah, that's what a lot of people my age these days are saying. Over and over and over. So many photos. And in many of them, they're trying to look like Audrey Hepburn. But I hope after today, you've gotten a sense that it's not just the outer beauty that we should all know about her. It's the fantastic, graceful inner beauty. So thank you for joining me. I hope that you liked this. And we'll see you soon. We will see you next week, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday at 1 o'clock Pacific, 4 o'clock Eastern for another live show. And be sure to check out Dennis and Julie, which is every Sunday at 1 o'clock Pacific, 4 o'clock Eastern. And as always, you know that you can email me at julie@julie-hartman.com. I love hearing from you. Love hearing your suggestions if you have them for rabbit holes. Although, again, trust me, I got it covered. Be well, everyone. I'll see you soon.